The issue in congregated settings doesn't apply to asylum seekers, but it does to nursing homes.
Very much. We have to move on. Thank you, Deputy.
First question is to Ms Buckley, just in relation to, I'm just wondering, have all healthcare workers now been moved out of direct provision, and if they haven't, why haven't they been, as they are vitally important? And I'd also like to ask you, just in relation to you mentioned in your opening statement there that the Jesuit Refugee Service have launched a support service for residents of centres. I'm wondering just how long it's been in place, how many calls it's received, how much feedback there has been to you in relation to it, because I know from my own experience that you won't accept complaints or positions from anybody other than residents, and I'm just wondering why that service was introduced. And so in relation to the testing from the HSE, I would just like to ask you, the department have said in their explanation that there is approximately 8,700 residents across the asylum system. The department, the HSE, have tested 1,734. I'm just wondering, why hasn't all residents been tested, and what's the difference between a hostel and a nursing home, when we have done blanket testing for all people living in nursing homes and all staff there, and why hasn't it been rolled out for the HSE or for the asylum seekers? Thank you.
So the first question, Deputy, was have all healthcare workers moved out? The short answer to that is that we were able to identify approximately 160 people from our labour market access records who we thought were working in a care setting and might need solutions provided to them. We proactively went out and tried to contact every one of those healthcare workers. In fact, we asked a particular NGO to help us do that as well, which they readily did. Unfortunately, there was a relatively low take-up of the accommodation offers by the healthcare workers. Something between 10 and 20% of people actually even indicated a willingness to do so. And there would be lots of reasons for that, including, for example, that they have family in the direct provision centre, they don't want to leave them. They might be perfectly happy in the direct provision centre. Some of them are, many people are quite happy where they are. Perhaps the accommodation that was on offer from the employer or from the HSE wasn't of the right kind, or they weren't happy with it. Since the choice to us is to say to people, either evict them from our centres, which we are not willing to do, or to say that they have to give up their job in healthcare, which we're not willing to do. All we can do is continue to recommend to people they take up the offer, and we do and are continuing to do that. But it is not mandatory that people do it, it is an offer. With regard to the JRS line, got it up and running on Thursday. We've been working on it for a couple of weeks. In the first 2 days we took in 11 calls, and 10 of those issues have been resolved at this, as of the time we got a report yesterday morning. So the centres, the line is up and running, and it's a really useful way for people who might, for whatever reason, and we continue to say to people, if you have a problem, please tell us first, because we can fix it. And if you have a problem and you raise a problem about your centre, that information will never travel across into the International Protection Office. It will have absolutely no effect whatsoever on your application for asylum or permission to remain.
With respect, residents don't believe that.
I appreciate people would.
They won't.
JRS line is a way of trying to ensure that they have a neutral place to go to where they can raise concerns, and we will certainly happily deal with that. But in fact, many NGOs take in these queries and refer them on to us, and we've received a few dozen NGO-related queries into our helplines over the last few.
Your officials in the department have refused to take problems when I've raised issues with them. They've refused to take them.
I'm very surprised to hear that, Deputy, but if there's anything specific you want to refer, you can refer directly to me. But we actually are open to deputies raising specific issues as well. As I say, we prefer to hear about them ourselves first, because it means we can try and do something proactively before it gets out on Twitter and all those other things that happen. With regard to the blanket testing, I'll pass over to my colleagues.
I spoke about this earlier, just to say we've got clear evidence of what I said earlier. Whilst we got positives as a consequence of some of the testing we did when we learnt of outbreaks in some of the centres, when we did actually do 9-10 centres, there was no case identified when we screened all the residents in those, which coincided with the information we were getting from elsewhere from that mass testing, that outside of areas where there were known outbreaks, the testing produced very little, if any, positive cases. So we are now very clear that mass testing is not the appropriate way to go in this. It is far better to look at it in terms of testing around known cases and being very strict and very quick around that sort of thing, which is what we're doing now as a consequence. And we always do that very rapidly now. Our testing is down to the point of being available within somewhere between 36 to 48 hours at the very longest. The results are back as a consequence.
So if a nursing home turned up negative on your testing, it wouldn't be signalled for another test?
Significant number of throughout that process, as when you moved into the areas where there had been no cases, it showed very little, if any, cases whatsoever. And that is, again, as I said, in the 9-10 that were tested of direct provisions, totally outside of any hint of problems there, none of them had a positive case.
So the issue in congregated settings doesn't apply to asylum seekers, but it does to nursing homes.
Very much. We have to move on. Thank you, Deputy.